Welcome to In the Zone. I am Craig Zimmerman, your host, and today for In the Zone number 29, we have Janel Coppens. Welcome, Janel.
Thank you.
We always talk about this being an informal discussion amongst the two of us. Nothing too difficult, nothing too deep.
Okay.
And if you or I say something we don't like, we can always have Paul digitally edit it.
All right.
So I know most of the questions, obviously. The answers are pretty simple, but tell us about where you were born and raised.
Born and raised Marine City, Michigan.
Yeah.
Went to Marine City High School. Dad was a I think he coached everything between
Just
Holy
about.
Cross,
Yes.
when it was at the high school, Marine City High School.
And your dad was Mike Miller.
Mike Miller,
Yes.
lifeguard coach of everything.
Yep.
And Debbie Gromack,
Yep.
have one younger brother, Dustin.
Yep.
So.
Your family goes way, way back
Yeah.
in my life because as Jughead, your
Yep.
father, grew up down the street, I was one of the little kids, 10, 12 years old, and he was one of the big kids.
And he would organize all the backyard
Yes.
tackle, touch football.
Yeah. Well, and then even going so far, we'll say teenage years, he was the one running the summer program.
Yeah, the rec department.
Yeah. So we went camping with Mike. We did all these different
Yeah.
things that were fun things. And, you can't think of Marine City without Mike in the sense that all the things that he did, like you said, he did the recreation,
Yeah.
he coached all those things.
I didn't appreciate it being a kid. You'd
Yeah.
walk Maritime Days, right?
Right.
When it used to be downtown, and you'd walk Maritime Days, and you would get 2 feet, and you'd stop, and then you get another 2 feet, and it's like, I just want an elephant ear, and you
Right.
can't make it from one end of town. Never appreciated it until now. My kids
Right.
have that happen with myself.
Yes.
And they're like, Mom,
Can we just-
can we get the elephant ear already? And you just look at how many youth
Yes.
that he mentored.
Touched, yeah.
The mentoring, whether it was in-house suspension, teacher,
Right,
monitor, to coaching, it's multiple generations,
Yeah.
and that, I guess, is inspiring, and maybe why I ended up doing what I'm
you're
doing.
Yeah.
So.
So you graduated from Marine City in what year?
98.
Okay. So you went on to college somewhere in the South Bend, Indiana area?
South Bend, Indiana, yeah. St. Mary's College, Notre Dame,
Okay.
where I swam for 2 years and also then played volleyball for a year.
Okay. Explain the St. Mary's scenario connected to Notre Dame.
So originally, St. Mary's was the all-girls, well, still is all-girls, university, college, and Notre Dame was the male. In the 70s, they looked at joining, and something happened where they didn't join.
Sure.
The agreement wasn't kosher to either side, and then Notre Dame accepted females at that point.
Sure.
And went co-ed. St. Mary's stayed single-sex.
So then, if you went there today, though, I'm guessing, I've not been there, you still feel like it's almost one and the same?
Yes and no. I mean,
Okay.
I think is what Route 31 separates it. I mean, but you still have shared amenities. We used to practice at Notre Dame's pool because St.
Okay.
Mary's only had this little Motel 66 kind of pool, and it's which is no longer there. They filled it in. But we practice at Notre Dame. You take a lot of classes at both places. I was in
Okay.
ROTC at Notre Dame. A lot of Notre Dame students will come over and take education classes at St. Mary's. So a lot of cooperative. I have a graduate right now that's at St. Mary's, and she's doing a dual degree. She's getting, I think, a chemistry degree at St. Mary's and then an engineering cooperative through Notre Dame. So
Now,
you get the football tickets too.
not have gone there, say myself or other people that are going to view this
Mm-hmm.
program, would it be similar to a Michigan State or a University of Michigan campus, very large like that?
When I went there, it wasn't that big. It has expanded immensely, even in just the last, I would say, 10 years. It's crazy what is just with the medical school, Indiana Medical School, and other buildings, and just even the football stadium, how it's changed. But it's more Michigan State. It wouldn't be U of M. It's not urban. It's very self-contained.
Okay.
Everything's on campus. And St. Mary's, I'm trying to think, it'd be more kind of like an Elma, an Olivet, a
Okay.
Calvin, where it's very wooded, kind of secluded, and everything's right there.
Okay. And I'm guessing that you're getting the full experience because you are there.
It was the best of both worlds. You had the the all-girls, and going co-ed public school to go to a private girls'
Right.
college was a kind of a shocking system. But you had that independence of literally rolling out of bed and going in your pajamas to class because there was no guys, and who cares,
Who cares
all
what
right,
you're
I don't
tired
care. But then you had the big university literally across the street with the massive football games and the basketball games and the marching band. So it was best of both worlds. I mean, I had lectures that were large, and I had classes that maybe only had 10 kids in it.
Oh, okay.
So it was a multiple experience.
A lot of people don't realize, because they don't really look at the map, of how close South Bend is to where we sit in southeast Michigan.
Well, if they would have drawn the line straight across, South Bend would have been in Michigan.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably as close as western Michigan is, or maybe
Yeah.
Elma.
4-hour drive. I
Yeah.
mean, when I looked at attending northern Michigan, it was further
Oh,
away.
Right.
I could be in state, but yet further away. So it's a little over 4 hours, so it wasn't that bad.
Yeah. So you went there and graduated what sort of degree?
Mass communications and political science, was going into public relations. That
Okay.
was the first career. But in, '02, the market went south.
Okay.
Everybody wasn't outsourcing communications anymore. So I came home and I started coaching and substitute teaching and realized, man, I think I like this, and maybe this is what I should be doing. So then I went back to school for education.
And so you coached swimming for a number of years. How many
Coached
years?
2
roughly?
years at St. Clair High School boys, and then after that I coached in Marine City girls and boys alongside my dad until 2012.
Okay.
So a little over 10 years.
Okay.
So
So then you did that, and that was, I can't remember now, was that before or after getting married? Right in the
kind
middle.
of right in the middle, because
Okay.
I think I was pregnant with one of the kids on the pool deck, and
Okay.
the swimmers would be like, "Don't run!" and I'd be running on the pool deck. But yeah, got married in '03.
Okay. So you come back, you coach at your alma mater, if you
Coach at
will,
my alma mater.
which is probably a pretty comfortable scenario.
And the bigger rival.
Right.
That was uncomfortable.
Right.
It was fun, but it was.
It's funny how these small towns, and I've talked to many
Yeah.
coaches from both ends of the district, and it's it's
Yeah.
different for both ends.
We're in that red and blue was a little bit different than the orange and black. I got
Right.
thrown in once for saying, go Mariners by accident on the Saints pool deck, but they.
Okay. Explain your family. You've got a family.
So
and
I
grew
have
up-
3. I
Yeah.
have my son Brett, who just graduated. Will be 18 in a couple weeks, and then Molly, who's a sophomore, and then a little Olivia, who's 7.
Okay. So, and you are now and have been the principal, and I don't know if it's head administrator or what.
It's kind of a lot of private schools will have a president and a principal. President handles all of the financial, administrative, and then the principal, the academic. We have a head of school model, so I cover both. I have both roles.
Okay.
So I do everything financial, administrative, the whole encompassing.
And you're at Austin Academy.
Austin
and-
Catholic High School, yep.
And let's explain to people where that is, because some people around here don't know where it is.
Mm-hmm.
You used to be on 26 Mile, just east of North Avenue, but you're now at 23 Mile west of Gratiot, right around the railroad tracks.
Yep, right past the rail, across from the old Lionel train building.
Right.
Yes, we're on 23 Mile Road. We started out renting a facility. The school started small, started with the 9th grade, and then added, as they moved up, we
Yep.
added, and we doubled every year for the first couple of years, and then we kind of outgrew the space that we were renting. And give it to the founders. They did it smart. Instead of building this big, massive building
Sure.
and having a mortgage, they started and build up the enrollment, and justification for either building or buying. They decided to buy the recently closed down from the L'Anse Creuse district, Chesterfield Elementary, instead of building on the property they had.
Sure.
Justification, I mean, just again,
dollars and
financial.
cents, yeah.
Dollars and cents. I mean, the building was move-in ready. Now, granted, you got to convert now a public elementary to a private high school.
Right.
More office spaces, a gym,
Right.
things that the high schoolers need, science labs.
The lockers a little taller.
Well, the locker is not so bad. One of the first things, funny joke, is when we toured the building, the board members are like, "What are you doing?" I went right into the male bathrooms, and the first thing I wanted to make sure is where the urinals were.
Right.
I said, you know how expensive it would be to retrofit every bathroom in
Right.
here
They're
because
way
there's
low.
little potties.
Right.
At the time we had just graduated a 7-foot tall Nigerian international student. I
Right.
said, there's no way
Right.
he could use it. So, no, everything was in good shape.
That and the drinking fountains.
And the drinking fountains. Those ones are a little bit easier to move.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, so we've slowly started to fill that building and now renovate it to fit for the high school.
And what year are you in there?
We are in our 7th year in that building,
Okay.
and we are starting our 12th year
Okay.
overall.
What about enrollment, numbers of enrollment?
We are going to be around 115 this
Okay.
year.
Okay, which gives you a senior class of somewhere around
I think we're
30
going to be
40?
22 this
22?
year for the senior class. Incoming freshmen are going to be right around 30.
Okay. So you probably have to answer questions, I'm not going to say every day, but on an ongoing basis of the pros and cons of a small school, right, of 120 or whatever kids. Tell me about that.
So, coming from Marine City High School at the time, I think we graduated with 120 kids. So
Sure.
for me, my graduating class was about the size of the school. But
Yeah.
one of the things that I love is I know every single student in
Sure.
that school. I can tell when that student is having a bad day. I can tell when that student needs a pick-me-up, needs to talk.
Sure.
That's so important nowadays. These kids having a mentor, and I think even with coaching and going through every young adult needing a mentor of some
Sure.
kind is so important. And I'm not knocking the big schools, but when you have schools of 6,000 kids,
Right.
half the time the counselors, and it's not their problem.
No, it's just the mass
They
numbers
don't
of people.
know their
Right.
students,
Right.
and we can't churn our young adults out like a factory. They
Right.
have to be an individual. They have to be tailored. We tailor every single student's academic program to them and their needs. Those are the biggest benefits to small school. Now, granted, small school, you don't have as many opportunities,
Sure.
but we've done an outstanding job. We have 12 varsity sports, 13 we just had girls golf, so 120 kids with 13 varsity sports.
Right.
It is pretty impressive. AP programs, dual enrollment, fine arts. If they want to make it happen, we help them make it happen.
Sure.
So that's been the fun, is watching it grow.
And I mean, yeah, that's the type of thing that as time goes on, you probably won't be able to know them as intimately if you double in size in 3-4 years.
Correct.
But 250 still would not be a crazy
Yeah.
number by today's
Yeah.
standards.
Yeah, I would love to see when my time has finally come to say, okay, I'm moving on, whether it's moving south or retirement or whatever. I would love to see us around the 250, 260. I think that'd be a really good number. Even 180, I would love to see.
Well, I mean, you and I have talked about it. I've talked to Ron about it. I've talked to Bill about it a little
Yep.
bit. Bill Nesbitt, who also works at the school. It looks like it's just waiting to happen with regards
Yeah.
to a couple pieces of the puzzle being put
Yeah.
in. The one thing you mentioned was getting your activities and fields going pretty soon. We don't have an exact date, but your football field, track?
No
Okay,
track.
okay.
It'll be a multi-sport turf field.
Yep.
So it will have football, soccer, and then softball and baseball
Sure,
will
corners. Yep.
with the the stands
Yeah.
and everything else. We were kind of limited on the
Space.
We have 14 and a half acres where we're at, but the way the building sits.
Sure.
So they've done a nice job drawing it in the corner there. But those are the main sports that we don't offer. I mean, we have
Right.
soccer, and we're blessed to have cooperatives with some local churches and fields. But, a lot of the gym sports we have, but to have that home crowd,
Well, right.
we always
Sure.
have to go over to someone else's court
Field.
to play. So having that home crowd, but baseball and softball would be huge to add, and then the football.
Yeah.
Having grown up with a football
Right.
coach dad and immersed in the Marine City, having those Friday night football
Well, it builds a lot of.
It does.
Yeah,
It really
does. A lot
does.
for
The school spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, when that comes to fruition, you look at where you sit in the 23-mile and I-94 corridor. My goodness sakes, you've got, there is no secret. There's Cardinal Mooney in the Marine City side. There's at the other end of the spectrum, you've got Pontiac Notre Dame Prep.
Yeah.
Farther west.
Yep.
You've got De La Salle to the south, and there's kids from Macomb Township and in that general area going to those schools.
Well, even this year we graduated four students that were the Marine City, Algonac, St. Clair area. Depending on where they live in the Cottrell area, it's sometimes quicker. Even Port Huron, we've got 2 teachers that live in Port Huron, it's quicker for them to get to us than it is other locations
Sure.
that maybe geographically, offset.
I never thought about it, but like if you live by the Marine City Airport,
Yeah.
you can probably be at your school in what, 15
Yeah.
minutes?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
and-
25, 26 minutes for me to get there from where I'm at, depending on traffic, but 26 is always,
Right.
give or take.
and it's probably 10 minutes to get to Marine City High, so there isn't that big a difference.
It's not.
Yeah.
We're geographically located in a really nice area, and we were blessed to find the building.
Yep. Any mentors that you have?
Oh gosh, mentors. I guess the first one I'd have to say would be my dad.
Yeah.
When you're growing up, you don't necessarily see that. For me, the awakening point was when he passed away a little over 2 years ago. And just seeing the number of youth and young adults
Right.
and grown-ups. I
Right.
mean, there's, multiple generations. That's inspiring. When you look at what you choose to do in a career,
Right.
your vocation, are you living your best self, and are you helping others live their best self? And I guess that's kind of what I realized. I didn't want to be in the business world.
Sure, sure.
That this made a difference. I'd have to say another would be, she was my athletic director at St. Mary's, Lynn Kashmarek, who now does consulting and travels the world speaking,
Okay.
motivating either Division I athletes to big corporations. I still keep in touch with her. She's still someone I call when, how do I handle being a career mom? The mom part, will my kids still turn out okay?
Right.
And she's gone through that, and her kids are all in great places, but set a really good tone.
Okay. Any defining moments as an administrator in high school?
Oh, defining moments. Well, there's always fun stories of being an administrator in a high school. I guess for me, one of the defining moments was our very first graduation. Whoever plans the very first graduation
Right.
of a high school, where do you start? Like, well, what will be our tradition? What
Right.
we decided that year would become tradition for other years. That was pretty awesome to plan that and to see now building these traditions and building those students coming back and visiting. We've created something, and to be a part of that has been truly awesome.
Sure.
But yeah, that was a defining moment. There's individual stories, even back with some of the swimmers, some of my first years of coaching swimming, and now watching those kids get married and
Right.
have
Right,
kids,
kids
but sometimes it's just even little successes. We had a young man that was told he was never going to graduate high school, and he went on and he's going to college now, and
That's a big
there's-
deal. Right?
That's
Yeah.
big deal,
Yeah.
and just watching some of these kids, I've seen what the school did for my own son. He won't admit it, but
Well, he will in a couple of
yeah,
years.
and maybe in a
Yeah.
couple years, and
Yeah.
and he didn't spend much time in mom's office, thank goodness. But
That was one of the next things I was going to ask. Being an administrator or a teacher, for that matter, in a school where your kids go, it's got to be difficult. Rewarding at other times, but
it was easier for me helping my teachers who had kids in the school, reminding them that they have to set that boundary. But when it was my own turn, I remember leaning over to Ron Glodich and say, "How did you sit in the stands,
right.
right, and watch your child?" And the funny thing is, Ron was my coach in high
Sure,
school,
yeah.
and then I coached his daughter in swimming,
Yeah.
and now he's coached my son. So it's been this
Right.
big circle. And I pulled him aside. How do you live in a community? How can you be friends with the parents,
Right.
but yet, when they start complaining about the coaches,
There's a
you
line.
kind of
gotta-
have to slide
yeah.
yourself down the bleachers and
Right.
put distance. And he was a big help. It's not easy.
Right.
It really isn't. There's been some times where I've found myself yelling at him in the hallway to turn his homework in, and all the other kids are like laughing at him. I was like,
Right.
Mom, that was so embarrassing.
Right.
You learn. I think he was my trial, and now I've gotten a little bit better with the second one now.
Okay.
we have our
Separated
distance.
and exactly.
It's not easy, and I give credit because I know when I was at Marine City, you had Coach Bob had his kids there,
Yep.
Scarcelli had his kids
Yep.
there, Glodich had, it was that small town
Oh, yeah.
where you coached and taught in the community that your kids, and I give them all the credit.
They
My
made it
dad
work.
worked in the school, and I
Yeah.
remember, you get special treatment. No, actually,
it's
you got
the
more.
opposite.
Yeah, you got.
Yeah.
It was harder on you. And I see it through the eyes of a different lens now, I guess,
Sure.
because when my daughter comes home and says everyone thinks I get special treatment, And she's like, how do I tell them that you actually yell at me more?
Right.
But I guess it really makes you appreciate, but also instills a little bit more of an ethic and thicker skin.
Sure.
I know I had to develop some thick skin.
Well, one of the messages that I've noticed that or one of the things I've noticed that's changed in the schools is more of these parents getting, shall we call it, vocal at sporting events when really you
But
need
don't
to
come
curb
watch
that.
when my kids
You know?
play.
Or at the officials or
Yeah.
whatever. In today's world, it's hard to get officials, and some of that
Officials
is due
is
to
so
that.
hard, and being a small Catholic league school, we're usually the ones that get the least number of
Right.
officials. Your bigger schools and the bigger districts and the bigger leagues,
Right.
because they can pay more.
Yeah.
It's hard. So I'm currently coaching volleyball.
Okay.
So I get it from both sides. I see the reffing from a coach's perspective.
Sure.
Driving home with my daughter, she's getting it from the player's perspective. The parents pull me aside, and
Sure.
but they don't get into it necessarily for the money.
Right.
They love the sports. They want to help out. Yeah, the nice little paycheck is
Right.
is on the side. But if I could encourage more people to get into the officiating, that'd be awesome across the board.
And less from the parents talking and chirping
know,
at the ref.
I find I do it too. We all do it as parents. We want to blame someone, right, and for anything. But yeah.
Do you ever see, I'm switching gears here, but do
Okay.
you ever see the voucher, I've heard some talk about it, the voucher system ever coming to fruition in, say, your tenure as an administrator? Because that's something that's starting to
Yeah.
creep into discussions more.
It has been, and it's been on the discussions back and forth in the
Right.
state of Michigan. I know some other states have used the vouchers successfully. I find I'm torn because, yes, I'm
Yeah.
a product of public education.
Yep.
My kids went K-8 in public education here in the district. But I see the benefits of parents having the choice.
Correct.
Not to take away from Catholic or public education,
Right.
but public education is great.
Oh, yeah, gotta
I
have
think
it.
there are some public education areas that are flawed.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't see that until I had to get into private education where we've had to utilize every piece of
Yes.
money. And I've seen public education on the charter end when I worked at the juvenile detention center with the grants and the money that's out there.
Sure.
I think parents should have a choice.
Yeah.
I really do. Each parent, and just seeing with my own 3 kids, at one point I had 3 kids in 3 different schools in 3 different districts, public, private, all over.
Right.
Every kid needs something different.
Yep.
And you know, with
Yeah,
your
yeah.
children,
Yep.
every one of your kids may need something different,
They learn
whether it's a
different.
VOTEC program, whether it's a fine arts program, whether they need small private because they need small classrooms.
Right.
The parents should have that choice, and that's something that I've come to believe in a little bit more, just with my own kids and through the
Yeah.
the
And it's-
genre of education that I've done.
And it's not an easy solution
No.
or a simple, here's
No.
what it is. It's not
No.
easy. And it will be a tough decision, but I see as a society evolving, I think there will be a place for it. And just the idea is hopefully that they're able to answer as many of those questions that make it difficult to make
Correct.
it fair.
We're not cookie cutter.
Right.
No, fair isn't equal and equal isn't fair.
Right.
Every kid, every adult, everybody needs something different to be successful in life. I think vocation, voc ed, and
Oh, it's-
career tech
look
is
what's going on
huge,
now. I mean,
huge.
yeah.
And I think that's a lot of people get this idea that college isn't for everybody,
Correct.
or at least not right now at 18.
Yeah. The one thing I don't like about everybody going to college is
Yeah.
if you're 18 and you're unsure and you don't know, don't go waste the money because that's a big bill to pay.
I look at myself, I won't trade my St. Mary's education,
Sure.
and I'm using it now in
Sure.
the public relations part, the communications, even the political science part. But I went back and got another degree
Right.
because I realized that wasn't my passion, or not maybe what I
Yeah.
wanted to do at that time in my early education. And so many times that happens because who knows at 18, 19
what you
years
wanna
old
do.
what you want to do when you're 40, 50. And having those conversations with the youth and my own son right now is some of the the best conversations, those
Right.
honest to goodness, do what you want to do. And it's okay to start at SC4 or Macomb.
Oh, I
It's
think
okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
And so many times we knock that, and there's nothing wrong there. Or going voc ed.
What is your son doing in his first year?
He's going to go down to University of Northwestern Ohio,
Okay.
UNO, and he's going to do
Oh,
heavy
yeah.
diesel mechanic
Yep,
systems.
yep.
So kind of a cross
Yeah.
between vocation and
Well, that's one of those things,
college.
again, that's one of those things that's vocational. There will always be a need for good mechanics and,
Yeah.
and I say even like plumbers and electricians and many things like that.
yeah.
So, yeah, why not? And it's probably easier at 18 to want to be able to delve into that than go to English class.
Well, and some kids, I mean, I look at my own son. The kid is so smart in math and science. He was in our STEM program. He loves robotics, but he loves to tinker. He can't
Right.
sit still.
Right.
And that's something that, it has been so many kids that we ask them to sit down and
Right.
open a book instead of letting them tinker and explore and learn the good old-fashioned way.
Right.
And that's powerful.
Oh,
I mean,
sure.
I'm not. I mean, I took my general wood shop class with Mr.
Right.
Rombach and voc ed and made my birdhouse, and I know how to use my basic hand tools, but so many kids.
Well, if you look at society, really, we went away from that for a
Yeah.
number of years.
Yeah.
And
Now you need adulting classes.
And I would say a huge percentage of the people that were involved and knew said that's a mistake, but it happened.
It happened,
and now it's
yeah.
going to come back.
Yeah.
You can see where it's starting to come back
Yeah.
to some degree, and maybe not exactly the same that it has a shop class or a metal working class,
Mm-hmm.
but the vocational ed with the intermediate school districts and things like that.
But giving them a place
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
There was a generation that we've lost that didn't get that, and bringing it back is so important
Yep.
for our entire society.
Yep.
So.
We appreciate you coming here to Channel 6.
Thank you.
I hope that we're at least one thing here. I hope that your daughter, that we're able to impress her on this interview, that it made sense to her, and that
Mom, why are you being interviewed? I said, well, I guess it's because I coached and was an athlete and, still a community person
Yeah.
here in the district. So,
I like to learn about what people, the things they went through, some
Mm-hmm.
connections and things. So if people learned that you're connected to Mike Miller, and people learn that
Yeah.
know that you went to St. Mary's College, or people learn that you've got a family and you're twirling 6 things at one time, whether
like
you're,
so many other
yeah.
moms.
Yeah, everybody's doing it. So I think everybody learns something from every interview we do,
Yeah.
and we appreciate.
Well, I
you coming
watched
by.
Bill's and I learned something about him, and I went into the office the next day and I said, I did not know. And he kind of chuckled.
That's sort of
So,
the idea.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you for coming today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Have a great day. And if anybody knows of anybody that we'd like to put in here, like Janel Coppens, call me on the number 586-707-5811, and we'll hound him on a telephone call to get him in here. Thank you.